The Prime Minister's office denied reports that it accepted a 21-day ceasefire agreement with Hezbollah that was presented early this morning by the U.S. and France. The Prime Minister made the comments as he landed in New York, where he will hold meetings on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly before his speech to the world body tomorrow. Meanwhile, barrages of Hezbollah rockets continue to pound northern Israel, and the IDF carried out fresh waves of extensive airstrikes in Lebanon. The IDF says that a ground offensive is ready to go. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
In northern Israel, there are no signs of a potential ceasefire in the offing. Israeli Air Force jets struck over 300 Hezbollah targets in the past day alone. Targets included rocket launchers used in attacks on Tzfat, Nahariya, and towns east of Haifa. Among the targets were Hezbollah operatives, dozens of weapon depots, and primed rocket launchers. Before leaving for the UN General Assembly, Prime Minister Netanyahu gave no hint that ceasefire efforts could be close.
אני לא יכול לפרט את כל מה שאנחנו עושים, אבל אני יכול להגיד לכם דבר אחד. אנחנו נחושים להחזיר את תושבינו בצפון בבטחה לבתיהם. אנחנו מנחיתים על חיזבאללה מכות שהוא לא דמיין.
IDF Chief of Staff Halevi says the military is preparing for a ground offensive against Hezbollah in Lebanon, and military boots will enter enemy territory.
המטרה היא מטרה מאוד ברורה להחזיר את תושבי הצפון בטוח. כדי לעשות את זה, אנחנו מכינים את המהלך של התמרון. והמשמעות שהנעליים הצבאיות שלכם, מגפי התמרון, נכנסות לתוך שטח האויב.
The head of the Northern Command said the troops are ready for the task ahead.
נכנסנו לשלב אחר במערכה, ואנחנו בתוך חיצי הצפון. בחיצי הצפון עניינה התחיל בפגיעה מאוד משמעותית ביכולות חיזבאללה, בדגש של יכולות האש של חיזבאללה. ופגיעה מאוד משמעותית במפקדים ובאנשים, ואנחנו צריכים למול זה לשנות את המצב הביטחוני. אנחנו צריכים להיות ערוכים מאוד מאוד חזק לכניסה לתמרון ולפעולה.
The goal is clear, whatever is needed to return northern residents to their homes.
The Israeli people are feeling the multi-front nature of the war. Barrages of Hezbollah rockets continue to strike northern Israel. An Iraqi drone caused damage in the Eilat port, and it is day 356 of the war in Gaza. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
Putting a damper on reports of an impending ceasefire, this morning Hezbollah fired a barrage of some 50 rockets toward Akko. Some were intercepted and the rest fell in open areas. Earlier, Hezbollah terrorists continue to launch barrages of rockets toward Haifa in the western Galilee, wounding 2 people in a direct impact in Kibbutz Sar near Nahariya. The barrage came not long after the terror group fired waves of rockets at the Carmel and Wadi Aras area in northern Israel, as well as at the city of Tzfat. 40 rockets were fired at Tzfat. One of those rockets directly hit a home in the city, causing major damage, but no injuries.
בשעות האחרונות, צפת ובפריפריה, מטח כבד של עשרות פריטים. לצערי הרב, יש לנו פגיעה ישירה באחד הבתים, באחד השכונות בעיר צפת. למזלנו, המשפחה שוהה כרגע בחול, אז ככה שהאירוע הזה נגמר ללא נפגעים. ביממה האחרונה אנחנו ראינו פגיעות בתוך בתים שהתושבים שהו במרחבים ממוגנים, בדגש לממ"דים, וניצלו.
Meanwhile, an explosion-laden drone made impact in the southern city of Eilat. The Iran-backed Islamic Resistance in Iraq launched 2 drones in the attack. One of them was intercepted by an Israeli Navy air defense system. The second drone hit the Eilat port, causing damage and lightly injuring 2 civilians who did not require hospitalization. The war continues in Gaza. More than 40 Hamas operatives were killed by Israeli troops all over the Gaza Strip during the past day. In northern Gaza, the IDF launched a new pinpoint operation in Beit Lahia aimed at destroying Hamas infrastructure there. In central Gaza, the IDF launched several raids in Gaza City's Sabra and Zaytun neighborhoods. They located and destroyed several tunnels in the area. And in the southern Gaza Strip, the IDF continues to operate in Rafah and along the so-called Philadelphia corridor on the Egypt-Gaza border. In Rafah, the IDF says troops killed several gunmen in a tunnel shaft and located weapons.
As the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah escalates, diplomatic efforts to de-escalate the violence between Israel and Hezbollah are in full swing, and efforts for a ceasefire are intensifying, with the international community working to prevent a wider war in the region. The United States and France have called for an immediate 21-day ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah to allow space for diplomatic negotiations. The ceasefire, supported by 10 countries, including Germany, Japan, and Saudi Arabia, aims to prevent the conflict from spiraling into a full-scale war. The proposal is based on the terms of UN Security Council Resolution 1701, which ended the Second Lebanon War in 2006 and would require Hezbollah to withdraw from southern Lebanon near the Israeli border. The ceasefire also ties into efforts to finalize a Gaza ceasefire under UN Security Council Resolution 2735.
The best answer is diplomacy, and our coordinated efforts are vital to preventing further escalation and to paving the path to greater peace and stability.
French President Emmanuel Macron, addressing the UN General Assembly, urged Israel and Hezbollah to halt their fire to prevent a third Lebanon war. He called on Israel to stop its escalation and Hezbollah to cease missile launches. Macron also stressed the need for those supporting Hezbollah to end their involvement. Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer addressed the UN Security Council and urged the international community to push for a political resolution to the conflict.
The region is on the brink. We need an immediate ceasefire between Israel and Lebanese Hezbollah and the implementation of a political plan which allows Israeli and Lebanese civilians to return to their homes to live in peace and security. That security will come through diplomacy, not escalation.
And joining me now is Professor Kobi Michael, senior researcher at the INSS and the Misgav Institute. Kobi, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Kobi, the United States and France, along with 10 other nations who have supported this, have proposed a 21-day ceasefire. How realistic is this proposal given the current intensity of the conflict and given Netanyahu's words from just earlier?
I think that it is not so realistic. It is not well grounded to the reality. And I think that Israel will do a huge mistake if it will accept it. I think that the only proposal that Israel should accept is the full realization of Security Resolution 1701 from August 2006, and not stopping the fire until its full realization. Otherwise, we will find ourselves in front of a continuing threat, continuing manipulation and torture of Hezbollah with regard to the northern part of the state of Israel, with regard to the citizens who live there. And I think that there will be no government in Israel that will be capable to convince these residents to come back to their demolished home and to rehabilitate their communities.
So maybe you can elaborate a little bit about this Resolution 1701 for our viewers. What is it that we strive to get to with this resolution?
Resolution 1701 from August 2006, and this is a Security Council resolution, which is obliged. This resolution was following the Second Lebanon War, and it says that all the area between the recognized international border, the blue line, recognized by the UN and by the international community, and the Litani River will be empty for from any military presence of Hezbollah. And a very robust UNIFIL or UN peacekeeping force known as UNIFIL was established. UNIFIL was there before, but it was re-established. A very robust UN peacekeeping force composed of leading countries like Germany, Spain, France, and so on. And this peacekeeping operation force was responsible to assure, to monitor, to control, and to assure that Hezbollah will have no military presence there, and to prevent any sort of of military supply that will reach to Hezbollah. So as everybody knows, this resolution was not realized since its first beginning. And
Right.
it must be realized. Otherwise, we are going to find ourselves in another October 7th. And
So-
this is the reason that I said what I said before with regard to the Israeli position, as far as I understand, should be.
So given Hezbollah's lack of adherence to this resolution, how can we expect, whether in diplomacy or militarily speaking, how can we expect Israelis to trust that this will be applied?
Israel will not trust only on diplomacy, and I think that we have learned the lessons, the very heartening lessons, and Israel will control itself this territory. I mean, the territory between the international border and the Litani River, and not by necessarily military presence on this piece of land, but by having intelligence control. And whenever we will have intelligence indication that Hezbollah is trying to regroup itself, we will enter and we will smash them, exactly as we are doing in Jenin, Nablus, Tubas, or exactly as we are going to do in the Gaza Strip.
You know, I read today that some are of the opinion that only by assassinating Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, that would put an end to this whole ordeal with the terrorist organization Hezbollah in Lebanon. Would you agree with that statement?
I'm not sure at all. I think that we need Nasrallah, because if Nasrallah will not be there, I'm not sure that we are going to have a reliable address. And I'm not sure that his potential successor will be more convenient for the Israelis or for the others. I think that we have to continue hitting Hezbollah. We have to continue signaling to Hezbollah that we are prepared to an all-out war, that we are not afraid from an all-out war, and Hezbollah must understand, and the state of Lebanon must understand, and the international community must understand what might be the terrible consequences of such an all-out war.
Professor Kobi Michael, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nearly a year has passed since the tragic events of October 7th, yet the pain endures. We invite you to register for our virtual memorial event with Israel Bonds on October 7th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time or 9 a.m. Pacific Time, where we will remember the innocent lives lost and honor the resilience of our people. This event is free and open to all. Click on the QR code on the side of the screen to register. A group of New York lawmakers has introduced a proposal to condition federal funding for universities on their efforts to monitor and combat anti-Semitism on campus. The bipartisan initiative aims to address rising anti-Semitic incidents across the country by ensuring that educational institutions take active steps to report and counter such hate speech and behavior. Emily Schrader has the story.
Congressman Torres, thank you so much for joining us. I want to start by asking you, given the anti-Semitic scenes that we saw on campus in the last school year, and that we've already started to see some of them in this school year that just started, what is Congress doing and what can Congress do to help combat this hate speech on campus?
One thing we have done is we passed the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act in the House, which would essentially codify the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, right? As you know, IRA provides the most complete and comprehensive definition of anti-Semitism. You know, it rightly recognizes that anti-Zionism is the latest mutation in the DNA of anti-Semitism. And so I think mandating the adoption of IRA, we passed the legislation in the House, but it's waiting passage in the Senate.
Now, there's been a lot of foreign investment, we'll say, from other countries such as Qatar and a few others in American universities that some believe has, contributed to the anti-Semitism we see on campus. Can anything be done about that at the congressional level, and is anything being done to prevent foreign interference in our universities?
Yeah, I worry that American higher education has become corrupted by foreign gifts. The largest contributor to institutions of higher learning here in the United States is Qatar. And Qatar is a known financier of Hamas. I'm of the view that, universities that receive federal funding should be prohibited from receiving funding from adversaries of the United States like China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran, or receiving funding from countries like Qatar that are known to finance terrorist organizations. We cannot allow foreign countries to weaponize American institutions against America and effectively wage malign foreign influence operations on college campuses. Enough is enough.
Now, one of the things that you have kind of led in the Congress is holding social media companies accountable, such as TikTok, which has been quite controversial here. In this war, after October 7th, how have we seen social media abused, we'll say, by state disinformation, such as China, such as the Islamic Republic of Iran? How has this impacted what we're seeing to what Americans are seeing on social media?
So there's nothing unprecedented about anti-Semitism, which is an ancient hatred. What is unprecedented is the algorithmic amplification of anti-Semitism on social media. You know, social media platforms like TikTok and Twitter are enabling the anti-Semitic virus to spread at a speed and on a scale that we've never seen before. And the most egregious example is TikTok. You know, I sat on the China committee, which was the driving force behind legislation that would force a divestment on the part of TikTok. And our concern is that TikTok is not merely a social media platform, but it's become the leading news source for the next generation of Americans. Americans who are largely forming their views on issues like Israel on the basis of disinformation on TikTok. And the fact that we would allow the leading news source for our most malleable minds to be in the hands of our leading foreign adversary, the Chinese Communist Party, is an act of national self-sabotage. You know, that would have been the equivalent of allowing a Soviet company to own ABC, CBS, and NBC during the peak of the Cold War. And so we in Congress came to conclude that TikTok is a prohibitive national security risk for the United States and for the U.S.-Israel relationship.
Now, we're in a very interesting time right before presidential elections. Things are very divisive and partisan today. And anti-Semitism has been weaponized by some on the left and some on the right as something on the other side. Of course, we know anti-Semitism comes from every direction. What is your response to this sort of politicization of this issue?
Look, those who politicize anti-Semitism are not part of the solution. They are part of the problem. You know, there are those on the left who only see anti-Semitism on the right. And there are those on the right who only see anti-Semitism on the left. And we have to recognize that anti-Semitism comes from all directions. And we have to be committed to combating anti-Semitism, no matter what form it takes, no matter what ideological direction from which it comes. We have to transcend partisan politics in the service of combating anti-Semitism.
I know there's been some legislation put forward, or perhaps some resolutions that are bipartisan in nature. You yourself have been a part of those when it comes to dealing with anti-Semitism, particularly on campuses. What can you tell us about those resolutions or the bills that have been proposed?
For me, the problem is not a lack of legislation. The problem is a lack of enforcement. Right? If you are a college or university that is creating a hostile environment for Jews on college campus, you are acting in violation of Title VI of civil rights law. You are violating the civil rights of your Jewish students, and we need to ensure that there are more effective enforcement mechanisms for Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. So I've introduced legislation that would empower the Federal Department of Education to impose a monitor. You know, there should be a monitor who's on the ground, who sees the facts on the ground with his own eyes, and who will report to the Department of Education whether a particular college or university is complying with civil rights law. And if it turns out that a university is out of compliance, then we have to leverage the power that we have over federal funds to compel compliance.
Absolutely. Congressman Richie Torres, thank you so much for your time.
Always.
Some 300 Kakal JNF supporters were in the country this week as part of a solidarity mission. Our editor-in-chief, Mayan Hoffman, attended the kickoff event on Sunday. Here's a quick look.
Amid escalating tensions between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon, around 300 supporters and donors of Keren Kayemet L'Israel Jewish National Fund from 33 countries have arrived in Israel on a solidarity mission. This week, they've been visiting key Israeli communities near the Gaza envelope, reviewing projects that have received substantial funding over the past year and gaining a deeper understanding of the ongoing conflict. The mission began with a solidarity event in Jerusalem on Sunday, where President Isaac Herzog delivered a significant address.
We've never wanted war, and I add, we do not want this war, and we do not want it now. But let me be clear, we will not rest until Israel's citizens, all of them, can go back to their homes in safety and security.
The delegation includes KKL presidents, CEOs, and board members who traveled to Israel despite the ongoing challenges to reinforce their support for the country's residents and authorities in the midst of the war. Their mission also aims to emphasize the deep connection between Jewish communities worldwide and the current events unfolding in Israel.
אנחנו ביחד באמת מצליחים לעשות הרבה דברים טובים לעם ישראל, ואני חושבת שאנחנו לא יכולים אחד בלי השני. אנחנו אחים. אנחנו כאן והאחים שלנו בתפוצות.
And now it is time for our Hebrew word of the week. Each week, along with eTeacher, we learn a new Hebrew word and relate it to the Bible, current affairs, and our everyday lives. For more info on the Rosen School of Hebrew, please scan the QR code on your screen. But in the meantime, let's hear this week's word of the week.
Welcome to Hebrew Word of the Week. I'm Ariella, and in this segment, together with eTeacher, we explore the beauty and depth of the Hebrew language. We'll learn a new Hebrew word or phrase and see how it's used in the Bible, current events, and everyday life. Today's Hebrew word is shana, which means year. In Hebrew, the year is a significant unit of time, marking the passage of seasons, holidays, and personal milestones. Shana is a word that signifies both the flow of time and the opportunities for growth and renewal that each year brings. In Hebrew culture, Shana is particularly meaningful during the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, which is a time for reflection, renewal, and setting intentions for the coming year. Here are some examples of how the word Shana is used in a sentence. Shana tova v'metuka, have a good and sweet New Year. B'shana shavra tiyalnu ba'aretz, last year we traveled in Israel. So if you're interested in learning more about the Hebrew language, check out eTeacher. This online and live course is the most established Hebrew language instruction institution. You can learn with a time-proven method for every level or start from scratch. eTeacher offers dynamic online courses with live video lessons, weekly webinars, and ample support, allowing you to connect to a lively global community for an enriched learning experience. Scan the QR code or click the link below and visit eTeacher website today to learn more. I hope you enjoyed learning about the Hebrew word Shana. Please join us next week for another episode of Hebrew Word of the Week. And in the meantime, I encourage you to reflect on the significance of Shana in your own life and how you can make the most of each year. Feel free to share your thoughts and experiences with us in the comments below.
Sagot Winery, where passion meets tradition. Nestled in the heart of Binyamin, our vineyards yield exquisite wines crafted with generations of expertise.
Now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Partly cloudy skies are expected tonight around the country, with temperatures reaching lows of around 21 degrees Celsius or 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, mostly sunny skies are expected alongside highs of 32 degrees Celsius or 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Temperatures should stay consistent over the weekend. That's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Sivan Raviv. Be well, be safe, and thank you so much for watching.